force engagements of both the sides of aircraft. So possibly, this will be studied in all the staff colleges. How air power has possibly decided the flow of negotiations towards peace. Now, the effects and all those things will obviously come down a little later as we go along. What we have to ensure is that we don't land up in a situation where we need to activate again. And that's where the diplomats come in now. If the ball is now in the diplomats' court, what conditions do we place and with what authority we can say that at the end of it all, there would be no action from the terrorists and that they will not be given sanctuary in Pakistan. It should not become a new normal. If another Pahalgam happens, we again go up. And incidentally, we must be, I'm sure the politicians have asked and the diplomats, where are those guys who struck at Pahalgam? We must get to them. That's
absolutely, that remains key, and I think that's an important point. But let me go across to Shiv Arur at this stage. Shiv, the fact that India struck Skardu Air Base, besides anything else, tell us the significance of that.
Skardu is in the northern areas, of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, the northern areas, and it is a strategic airbase. I cannot imagine from where India must have struck, but this updated list of airbases that you just read out from Vishnu is an incredible list. I mean, this is going to compel people to study this, the actions by the Indian military of the last 12 hours for a long time to come. Chaklala, Rafiki, Murid, Sukur, Sialkot, Pasrur, Chunian, Sargoda, Skardu, Bholari, and Jacobabad. 11 of Pakistan's most premier Air Force bases in literally every part of the country, from Rawalpindi near the capital to Pakistani Punjab to the southern part of the country in Sindh, all the way to Skardu in the northern areas, means India was basically striking these bases from different places. This was obviously not just one action, it was a series of package actions against these bases. And once again, just to remind all of our viewers that a military action of this scale, of this intensity, of this audacity, if I can use that word as well, coming on the same day preceding a ceasefire, I think makes it very clear what the timeline of all of this is. I just wanted to add one small thing about what one of the other guests was mentioning, Vishnu and Gauri, which is that I think the United States is overplaying its role in this ceasefire. We are hearing that the talks were entirely bilateral, and them coming, just hours after these punitive strikes means that it was the Pakistani DGMO who picked up the phone, probably needed the ceasefire more, discussed this with India. India, in good faith, discussed it and saw interest in agreeing to a ceasefire from 5 p.m. today on India's terms. India has not agreed to any talks at any neutral site, which has been mentioned by Trump and Secretary of State Rubio. So that makes me doubt this whole patronizing ownership of being the person who stood in between Shehbaz Sharif and Prime Minister Modi and got them to talk and agree to this ceasefire. So I think it's very important to tell our viewers and share with our viewers that there's a lot of shadow play going on, a lot of superiority going on by the United States when this was bilateral and as a direct result of India's military actions.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But it would be fascinating to get the inside story of how this actually worked out.
Yeah.
And we will try and try and do that and see what role America did have. Was it an overwhelming role, or was it in fact essentially between India and Pakistan? Sunil Prabhu joins us at this stage. Sunil, do you have any other details that you can share with us on how this actually happened?
Well, 2-3 important points that I want to express, something that the Ministry of External Affairs and through informed sources have said, that one, that there were no preconditions. There is no change in our position, be it on the Indus Water Treaty or for that matter in our fight against terror. There will be no let-up on that. The call came from Pakistan, from the DGMO at 15:35 hours, even though President Trump, the US President Trump, made that announcement even before India's briefing. They have made it very clear that this was done bilaterally. Really the fact that the DGMO from the other side had spoken, we have had no let up on our fight against terror. This will continue. Most importantly, all the steps that India has taken vis-a-vis Pakistan, the Cabinet Committee on Security, be it the Indus Water Treaty, the stoppage of, and reduction of staff to 30, all those things stand as is basis. There will be the next round of talks on the 12th at 1200 hours, where they will take stock and go forward from there. But at this present juncture, we are very clear that no preconditions done bilaterally, even though the United States is attempting to claim credit for this.
All right, Shiv, let me come back to you. And let's just go through some of the military action which we've seen over the last couple of days. I think it's important to reflect on the initial strikes which went through. They were extremely successful strikes. We've seen that through satellite imagery, which we broadcast here on NDTV. That proved a certain capability which perhaps didn't exist in quite the same way just a couple of years back. Certainly some of the systems which we operated in terms of missiles such as the Scalp didn't exist when the Balakot strikes took place. We've got an array of surface-to-air missiles now, again something during Balakot which weren't all in place, certainly not the S-400 system. The ability to jam drones certainly didn't exist back during the Balakot times, and the drones themselves didn't exist either. So it's a radically new type of war, air war, which India and Pakistan fought, right?
Very true. The paradigm of battle between India and Pakistan has completely changed. I think the point you make about drone warfare is perhaps the most important. Remember, between the last time that India and Pakistan, had a confrontation, which is 2019 after the Pulwama attack and the Balakot airstrikes, you've had the Ukraine war, the Armenia-Azerbaijan war, in the middle, wedged in the middle there during the COVID pandemic. And both of those wars were, defined largely by drone warfare, or at least they became representative of what the paradigm of drone warfare could actually look like in a real-world combat scenario. And it was not surprising, therefore, that drones were employed in large measure by both India and Pakistan. Pakistan to, far less successful levels than India apparently was, because India managed to, hit radar facilities in Sialkot and Faisalabad and Lahore, principally using its kamikaze drones, whereas on the Indian side, despite hundreds of drones apparently coming in to attack military sites and others, most of them were taken care of by India's very, very comprehensive anti-drone measures. And I think, Vishnu, once the dust settles on this, it's only been, 2 hours since the ceasefire came into effect. I think military studies, academics are going to have to go into an incredible amount of detail as to the tactics used, the weapons used, the manner in which India has, raised the level of use of technology, the fact that India's air defense shield has in many ways come into its own, because this is a shield that has often been criticized before as being faulty, as being ad hoc, piecemeal, having glaring gaps, etc. But if the last 3 days are anything to go by, India's integrated air defense shield has performed overwhelmingly with success, whether it was kinetic, non-kinetic, ground-based weaponry like guns and the L-70 that we were talking about earlier. All of this has come together in a truly surreal collision of basic weaponry that we've been seeing used on the line of control versus some of the most sophisticated, artificially intelligent weaponry, including drones that can be trained to be autonomous, that was sent on these suicide missions into India. So I think a big, fat line has been drawn for what combat has looked like before the last 3 days and what it will perhaps forever look like now between the two countries and anyone else that tests India.
All right, let's go across to Aishwarya Jain. Aishwarya, I believe at the residence of the Prime Minister, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got a meeting of the service chiefs once again, is that right?
That's right, that's right. In fact, this is the second time in a day when we are witnessing that all the three service chiefs along with the CDS, NSA, all are present at the 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. It was early up in the morning as well when they all have reached along with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh at that point of time. And post the announcement of ceasefire, again the tri-service chiefs along with CDS and SA had reached at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. Of course, there would be discussion on how things will go on from now. These meetings are very sensitive and secretive in nature, but of course the ceasefire announcement has will now put out a clear picture as to how Indian armed forces, as the Ministry of Defence officials and the armed forces also stated in the press conference, that Indian armed forces will keep a strict vigilance on the western borders, and certainly there would be no terror activity or no ceasefire violation that will be tolerated in the near future. And therefore the reason perhaps straight messages were also, message came out from the sources in the Prime Minister's office earlier in a day, in which Prime Minister stated that the further if there is any terror activity on the Indian soil in the future, then that will be considered as an act of war. That will be implemented, and that would be the message that will go down to the armed forces as well. So certainly an important meeting currently being chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his residence at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg.
All right, Nazir Masoodi joins us right now. Nazir, you live in Srinagar, you've got your family over there. To hear bombs exploding in the area, whether they were bombs, drones, or surface-to-air missile remnants, whatever it was, you must be, breathing a sigh of relief at this stage that this military conflict has ended.
It is essentially a new life for the people, including me and my family, because the way the fear in which we are living, you can't express in words. I was in the border area, border town in Kupara. My family was here, and they were calling me when they were hearing the loud explosions. Nobody was sure where the next bomb will fall. Nobody was sure where it will hit. It is very easy and romantic to talk about war from a distance, but when it hits home, then I can see the people, what has happened to them who are hit, who are killed, who are injured, who lost their homes, who lost their relatives. Ask that family to the additional DC, Rajouri, the parents who lost their 2-year-old daughter today, Harsha Noor, and so many people who lost their lives. War is not a game, we saw on televisions, people romanticizing in people just playing as if it is a video game. That's not. It has consequences, it has a cost, and common people pay it. And the soldiers, don't forget those soldiers who are on the borders, they pay for it. Their lives are at stake. They're like you and me, defending the borders, but they have to pay a cost because they are decisions, political or military decisions. So when there's a ceasefire announcement, it's a huge relief for everybody, including me. And I could come back to Srinagar. And fortunately, we had got certain indications. Our 4 o'clock broadcast, I was talking about the same thing. And also in 5 o'clock, before President Trump tweeted this thing. But our source had told us there would not be any violation this evening unless Pakistan does something horrible. So one good thing is that, and all leaders have welcomed Chief Minister Umar Abdullah, who was actually, for all these days, give credit where it is due, with the people who have been affected, displaced people who had to be taking shelters, meeting injured, going everywhere. Former Chief Minister and PDP leader Mehbooba Mufti has welcomed every leader, Sajjad Loan, everyone.
No,
so
absolutely.
It is a huge relief for the people, and because it is the people of Kashmir who has suffered a great deal because of the conflict.
No, they have, and there's been so much damage as
and
well.
And they would be the happiest people.
Right.
To see this ceasefire happening.
Indeed. Ambassador Shashank, the former Foreign Secretary of India, joins us at this stage. Dr. Soumya Avasthi, Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, and Lieutenant General Anil Kumar Bhatt, former Director General of Military Operations, joins us. General Bhatt, I think DGMO is an important sort of post which you once held to start this conversation out on, since it is the DGMO of Pakistan who reached out to our DGMO. A lot of people would be wondering how that works. There's a hotline, so tell us how that works.
We have a very well laid out system between the two nations. and DGMO talks are regularly held. Of course, every week it is between the brigadier on this side and the brigadier on that side. And I have tenated that appointment, and I have been speaking every week to the Pak DDG equivalent to me. While the DGMO level talks are held whenever situations are a little higher, or there is a requirement for the two DGMOs to speak.
So the DGMO is of what rank? It's a brigadier on each side?
On a routine, a brigadier talks, but otherwise it is called the DGMO talks. And when situations are serious, it is the two DGMOs who talk.
No, so the DGMOs are the rank of Major General or Lieutenant General?
In case of Pakistan Army, a DGMO is a Major General, while in the Indian Army, we have it as a Lieutenant General.
Right. So they would have, there would have been this call which came through, and then they would have spoken. And now I believe the 12th is when they're going to review what takes place. How important is this mechanism in sort of pushing trust between India and Pakistan in a situation like this?
My experience tells me it is a very robust, a well laid out system which has always been working, even in hostilities, and it has worked this time also.
That's really interesting. The fact that there is so much distrust between India and Pakistan, when the DGMOs of both sides start talking, then by and large it's maintained. And you can give us examples of this, right? For example, when a soldier goes across or there's a ceasefire, give us examples of how both sides maintain trust despite the antagonism which exists between both sides.
Many years back, on a Sunday morning, I got a call that one of our helicopters, by mistake, has gone over to Pakistan. In the next 10 minutes, I was through to my counterpart, and thereafter, the two DGMOs spoke. And in a few hours, the helicopter had been returned to India.
Right.
Similarly, there was a Jawan which had gone astray, who had gone across by mistake. They initially confirmed to us immediately that he is with them, and a few days he was returned also. So many activities on the border between the two troops, even when there is exchange of sometimes of fire and it has to be stopped, the two DGMOs do talk to each other.
All right. Ambassador Shashank, I think it's also important to mention that this is just a ceasefire in terms of the kinetic action between the two sides is concerned. We have put the Indus Water Treaty on suspension. The diplomatic relations remain where they are, and other means or measures used by India remain. So we aren't. This is not this is a step towards ending the fighting, but it's not a step towards improving the relationship per se. Would you agree?
I agree. I think a couple of developments were taking place. Pakistan was short of funds. IMF had already offered them about $7 billion fund last July in several tranches. And I think this tranche was of $1.3 billion was coming up now. Another $1 billion would be coming up later. And therefore, it was a question of whether the Western countries which control the IMF and which they feel that they could use IMF to work on the developing countries. I think they worked on Pakistan. Secondly, I think the Russians had been very, very strongly supportive of whatever action India was taking. And therefore, Russia was getting closer to India in this position. And USA perhaps felt left out because they were talking of some kind of a ceasefire. They were talking of better relations between the two countries. I think their officials must have taken out the old briefing notes and started reading from them to their seniors. But I think what they forgot, that India has had enough. And the Americans themselves have suffered a lot. In fact, the Americans wanted to get hold of the terrorists who cut the neck of Daniel Pearl. It is the Indians who have got hold of him now, finally. So they should be grateful to India. So therefore, I think within USA itself, people are now saying, look, India is able to do things which the Israelis could not do or the Americans could not do. So therefore, the American administration was under some pressure to tell India that, okay, we don't want to put any pressure on you. So therefore, I feel that it's a conditional ceasefire. You're quite right, Vishnu. We should not go on any other larger actions that we have taken. Finally, action which we have taken against the terrorists and those supporting terrorism, instigating terrorism, that should be carried on irrespective of the number of years, and we should get hold of them. And this should remain as is a very good doctrine, which we have very clearly enunciated, that any act of terrorism will be considered an act of war, because the Pakistanis don't want to fight. They want to fight through the terrorists, and they want to keep talking about the nuclear and misleading the whole world with all kinds of falsehoods that they can spread through their ISPR.
Dr. Soumya Awasthi, you're a counter-terrorism expert. Detail has emerged today on the number of terrorists who've been eliminated in the initial Indian strike post-Pahalgam. At the end of the day, India went into Pakistan with military force to ensure that as many terrorists who are directly linked to the Lashkar-e-Toiba or the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Bahawalpur or Muridke or the other centers were eliminated. And to that end, that part of the operation was entirely successful, is my reading. Would you agree?
Am I audible? I can't hear anything.
We'll fix that line with you in a moment. Let me take that across to General Bhatt. Would you agree, sir, that we've achieved our objectives when it came, as far as the mission to hunt down terrorists?
Definitely. After Pahalgam, our response, as I would say, was restrained, professional, but surgical. We wanted to hit the terrorist camps from where these terrorists have been trained, motivated, and where their leaders would otherwise reside, and we were able to target all of them. Yes, of course, some of the leaders would have run away and escaped care of the Pakistan army, but we have been able to hit all the camps, and this is a message that this can again be done if the red line is crossed.
All right. Can we just try Dr. Awasthi again? Soumya, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Did you get my question?
No, I couldn't. Please.
No, I just want to know what you think about India's initial operation into Pakistan, where we hit Muridke and Bahawalpur. Several senior terrorists have been eliminated. Could you tell us about how successful that part of the operation has been?
I think we initiated a very successful operation under Operation Sindoor because India has always been loud and clear about its intention that their long-term goal has always been countering terrorism. So it was very successful in that sense. But what we received or the reaction that we received from Pakistan is not that we expected. Because if you see the trend, Pakistan has always been talking about countering terrorism within their own country, and their counter-terrorism division always talks about how many terrorists they killed. So we expected them to play a better role by accepting this operation more as a counter-terrorist operation rather than thinking of it as a direct attack on them. But given the current trajectory of Pakistan's ideological orientation, it's starkly, evident in the nomenclature of its operation name that they give, which is coming out from the Quranic phrase. Their continued Islamization of Pakistan's military leadership under Mullah Munir, and his presence is actually a troubling indicator of the revival of a doctrine where religion and military objectives are interwoven. And lastly, the statement that was recently given by a foreign minister in the parliament suggests that the madrasa students could be served as a second line of defense. So it exposes actually Pakistan's willingness to militarize religious seminaries. This confirms the use of their indoctrinated youth as an instrument of state strategy rather than using them more for cultural and religious purposes.
All right. Ambassador Shashank, any further thoughts at this stage on what the next stage of talks between India and Pakistan can be once we verify that the ceasefire has worked? That will take place on the 12th of this month. Do you actually see, a pathway towards diplomatic talks resuming, or too early for that?
I would say it's too early for that. In the past, the general impression among the Indian public is that whatever we gain during the war, we lose out during the diplomatic negotiations. So I think our diplomats are on great amount of tension right now. I think they should keep out of it for the time being and leave it to the defense forces to work it out, because that is very important. Because Pakistan had been saying that they would not do it. They would not carry out any other active. They are telling everyone, the whole world, that they are not escalating. It's India which is escalating, and it's hitting, India is hitting the mosques and hitting the madrasas and all these places. India is hitting only the terrorist targets. And if you see some of these places, they are still talking of, like Soumya talked about, whatever 313 or some various kind of, they are taking Al-Quranic phrases and using them for their purpose. And even little children are being trained to kill the Kafirs. So that training is going on, which means that Pakistan has not suffered, has not changed its attitude at all. And as regards terrorism within Pakistan, that is because Pakistani army is putting everybody, all their civilian population under their boots. So this is not done. I mean, we are a democratic country and we feel that we should respect all religions. But there we find that on the other hand, they are constantly encouraging action against the Kafirs. And everybody is a Kafir for them. So there are so many groups within the Islam, and the Pakistani army feels that they are the guardians of Islam. So when Pakistan army feels and they take out a person like Munir from the madrasa and make him the army chief, I think there is something wrong with that country.
We're going to take a short break at this stage, come back to this discussion. It's a huge day for India and Pakistan. It began with news of intense fighting between both countries all across, from Kashmir all the way down to Gujarat. But by the end of the day, we've got a ceasefire in place right now, one which has been brokered possibly by America, but certainly one that India and Pakistan have agreed to. We're going to take a short break and come back to this huge development. Stay tuned.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
That's huge. That is a biggie. It's out of there.
Gold Plus Clear Glass. Far ho ya near, sab kuch dikhe clear.
News is not just headlines. It is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24/7.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
Welcome back. Well, let's just listen in now to some of the key points mentioned in that press conference a little while back. There was a statement by the Foreign Secretary where he announced the ceasefire, and subsequently there was a press conference being attended by the armed forces to spell out some of the key points, including the action taken by the Indian Armed Forces today.
Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours. Thank you.
Several attempts were made by Pakistan on spreading a misinformation campaign, as we have seen for the last few days. There were attempts made to say that our S-400 at a northern base was destroyed, which was completely false, and that it was destroyed by a JF-17. It was a false information. Also, that the BrahMos installation was attacked and it was destroyed was false. The destruction of airfields at Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Bhuj, Nalia, etc. was also a false claim. The forward ammunition dump at Chandigarh and Beas are also fit and fine, and we showed you these in the photographs in the morning briefing today. Also, there was a certain different way of miscampaign that the Pakistan conducted by its press conferences, which was conducted in a manner which was completely misleading and devoid of facts. Pakistan has been spreading fabricated allegations that the Indian Armed Forces have targeted mosques. Let us make this very clear here, that India is a secular nation and the Indian Armed Forces are a reflection of our constitutional values. We hold every place of worship of all faiths in the highest regard. Our operations have been aimed exclusively at terrorist camps and facilities being used for anti-India activities. No religious sites, I repeat, no religious sites have been targeted by the Indian Armed Forces. Over the past few days, as we have seen, Pakistan all has suffered very heavy and unsustainable losses after it has given us an unprovoked attack on our installations. It has suffered losses in both land and air. There has been an extensive damage to the crucial Pakistani air bases like Skardu, Sargodha, Jacobabad and Bholari. In addition, a loss of AD weapon system and radars made the defense of Pakistani airspace untenable. Across the line of control, extensive and precise damage to military infrastructure and command control centers and logistics installations. In addition to that, 2 military personnel had led to complete breakdown of its defensive and offensive capability and also Pakistani morale.
Well, joining us now, Ambassador Javed Ashraf, who's been tracking all these developments very closely, very often with me in conversations. Ambassador, it's good news. Nobody wants war. Were you surprised, as the rest of us have been, at the pace in which it's all happened?
Vishnu, I think today was a very pivotal day, to be honest. It could have either escalated further or it could have de-escalated today. The reason I'm saying this is that, over the past 3 days, we have seen a pattern of constant escalation in the attack that is coming from Pakistan. And naturally, that was also responded to in a befitting manner from our side, which has led to a lot of damage to military assets and military infrastructure in Pakistan, some of which are very important and critical for their overall military preparedness. Now, if they had continued with this process, either escalation in the current domain or expanded the war horizontally. It would have met with, as I said before to you, that with continuous escalation dominance from our side. So there would have been two things in my mind that would have been at play. So I was half expecting that this would happen, especially when the news came out that we would treat any future terror attack as an act of war, that something or would have been working out. And I think two things would have definitely happened. One is that I think the international community would have been waking up to the reality of what Pakistan was attempting to do for whatever its objectives were, and that there would have been a degree of pressure on them because it was clearly the pattern of escalation and then response left the onus on them to start taking the steps to stop this. And the second was obviously their own internal calculations of how far they can go on to escalating this and sustaining this given the internal situation. And remember that we've all been aware of the fact that there is a much higher staying capacity and much, of course, asymmetrically more power to deliver from our side. So I think this would have been both a combination of a certain diplomatic pressures on them, and then second, I think also internal calculation on the steps that they have to take, because I think over 3 days they made an attempt to, at least in my view, get one or two major targets in India that would have given them a reason to celebrate or tell their people that we were able to reciprocate or pay India back in the coin. But there was, in a sense, an impenetrable wall of air defense, which had largely foiled this massive waves of drones and missiles that were coming into the country with no major damage.
But Ambassador Ashraf, let me ask you this, sir. The fact that we hit Pakistan as hard as we did, we hit Skardu, by the way. That's the latest in the list of air bases we struck, and I think at least 8 or 9 others, virtually every single Pakistani air base. And we were fairly relentless about this. The videos have showed significant damage in some of them. Do you believe that that is ultimately what pushed Pakistan to the negotiation?
That's what I'm saying, that, you know,
it wasn't just America's pressure and them saying,
No. I think that, listen, in anything of this nature, finally, it is the two parties involved in a process who make that decision. And no matter if their calculation was, and look, this is an era in which, a time in which the world is preoccupied with a number of its own issues, whether it's the United States, Europe, or China, or Russia. It is a time when this sort of international order has collapsed. It is not what exactly we had seen in the past. So there was, in a sense, space for them to continue with this operation. The message that they had got out of Washington, D.C. was, you guys need to sort this out on your own. You remember in the past, there used to be breathless shuttle diplomacy that used to start immediately after a major terrorist incident. So I think they felt that they had a space. I think there would have been, conversations are always taking place, but it's really the impact of the military measures that we took, and in a sense went beyond what they would have expected us to do, as you've just mentioned, and we don't need to repeat all the damage that we have done specifically in the course of these 3 years. And remember, each time we mentioned that we are acting in a measured manner and with a sense of responsibility. We had said on 7th that we have achieved our objectives and we have no desire to escalate, but that there would be a retaliation if Pakistan chose the path of a military retaliation.
You know, I've got a little bit of sources-based information, and I want you to reflect on it, that we are learning that the United States did play a role in de-escalation. How? By apparently placing direct pressure on Pakistan, linking the provisional release of a $1 billion IMF loan to the immediate acceptance of the ceasefire, with the remainder contingent on full compliance. Do you see that as being, you know, an interesting way in getting Pakistan to move fast?
You know, it's something which we've thought of. I've mentioned this elsewhere, that, you know, I mean, for us to sit and speculate precisely the nature of conversation that the United States would have had with Pakistan is difficult. But I think the timing says something. I mean, it was rather unusual that in the middle of a major conflict in which you could see the culpability and complicity of Pakistan in that attack, that the IMF board not just one funding, but it was two facilities really, the EFF and the RSF facility, totally combined 2.4 billion. And that may have been the incentive-disincentive game that the United States may have played with Pakistan, a lever that they may have exercised on them. But I think that would have been one of the, as I said, there would have been one of the two measures. The other is the direct impact that our military action had on the assets and the infrastructure of Pakistan military. So that was the most prudent course of action that they could have thought of at this stage.
Ambassador Ashraf, the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty remains. India isn't sharing any hydrographical data with Pakistan on the three northern rivers. Neither is there any resumption of diplomatic relations to at least to the standard at which they were. So none of that is taking place. It's just kinetic action has stopped, right?
It's exactly. We are talking of ceasefire, that of the military action. I mean, I'm a little loath to use the word kinetic because it's genesis.
Yeah, I know, it's a terrible word.
And it's a genesis is American, so I still call it a military operations. So I think that that is the only thing that has been addressed, because we took those steps, remember, in response to a terror attack of the most dastardly and brutal kind, which was followed by some of the most insensitive remarks that came out of Pakistan, including that it was a false flag operation. I mean, that just shows the level of obfuscation and denial that exists over there. That hasn't changed. Remember, you've not yet taken any steps on ending terrorism against India, or dismantling the infrastructure, or taking steps to rein in all the parties that are involved, cutting off financing, recruitment, motivational mobilization. All of that still exists. So what we have achieved today, is a ceasefire under a dual pressure, as we've just discussed. But we will then have to decide on the next course of action. Now, the next course of action will obviously be a conversation on what steps that are to be taken by Pakistan with regard to cross-border terrorism. Anything that leads to quote-unquote normalization of the relations is a long way off. Yeah. And it would require us to have a level of trust that this is not going to happen again. Because we've been through this yo-yo many times before, that we have a major terrorist incident that is followed by mobilization or a step of diplomatic and commercial steps that we take, measures that we take. And then, in a sense, when pressure eases off, then there is some set of return to normalcy without addressing this fundamental problem of terrorism. And so I think this is going to be, this time, I think we have made it very clear. We've changed the playbook, as I've said, that we have changed the pattern of response and seized control of the levers of post-attack development, in a sense, driving the process. And so I think we will continue to do that to achieve a longer-term objective.
All right, Ambassador, great speaking to you. It's no one wants war. It's welcome that this has taken place. Let's hope that ceasefire lasts, and let's see how it pans out from here onwards. Thanks very much, sir, for being with us. We're going to take a short break. There's more coming up.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
तू ही तो है जिसकी सच्चाई वाली क्लैरिटी की वजह से मैं आज यहाँ हूँ।
गोल्ड प्लस सिल्वॉक्सी मिरर्स, ऐसी क्लैरिटी कि आपको सिर्फ सच नजर आए, चाहे कितने भी साल बीत जाएं।
The last 1 month, if you see, the share prices of Denzol Engineering has fallen more than 58%.
Why are the rating firms calling the debt payments as default?
We have two
credible credit rating agencies on March 4th coming and downgrading the stock to D.
Statements are consistently being proven wrong, and transactions are being taken place which are different from what they were originally pictured to be.
The company claimed it would roll out 6,400 electric vehicles. But what it has rolled out is a shocking scam. Funds meant for the project were funneled allegedly back to the promoters, the Jaggi brothers. What did the money buy? Not EVs, of course, but a lavish flat in Gurgaon's luxurious DLF Carmelias.
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims? Know Your Company, powered by NDTV Profit Research, shines a light on the biggest stock market movers.
More news that matters.
Big exclusive. Tulsi Gabbard gunned down by Pakistan-backed cowards.
When you interact with people on ground, you're able to
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
All right, let's go straight across to NDTV's Nazir Masoodi, who's been tracking all the developments. Nazir, I think the focus in Jammu and Kashmir will now be to get a full assessment of the damage on the ground. Is that right?
Exactly. In fact, I spoke to Chief Minister Umar Abdullah a while back, and he was telling me maybe tomorrow or the day after he will be visiting Poonch, which is the worst hit by the ceasefire violation from Pakistan, massive shelling. Not only there's huge loss of properties, homes, shops, establishments. Many people have been killed in that area. Religious places were targeted, Gurudwara, Madrasa, temple. So it was madness, literally, and the way they targeted innocent people and the people. So now it is the responsibility of the government to reach out to those people, which way I said earlier, give credit where it is due. Government was actually alive to this situation. They reached out to the people who were affected, be it in Jammu, where Chief Minister himself was there. There were ministers who went to different places where people have been affected. Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha also visited Uri yesterday. So government was trying to do its best when people needed them the most. That was a good thing that happened. But now it is the question of relief and the rehabilitation of those affected. And see, the bigger thing people are hoping that this never is repeated. Neither the terror attack, what happened in Pahalgam, nor this what happened on the borders, or the bombs we heard with that reverberated Kashmir, that reverberated Spain, that actually shattered Srinagar this morning, and when bombs were actually dropping in Srinagar. So everybody was fearful. Literally everybody is so happy that it has ended. Whatever would be the political now, connotations of what has happened, but the fact is the hostilities, the confrontation has ended. This ceasefire on the borders, and there would be no shelling or drone attacks or missile attacks between the two. Hopefully it stays, and people have a sigh of relief, and they are hoping that enough is enough. Every sort of violence should stop now, and people of Jammu and Kashmir also deserve to live in peace.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a welcome day. If there is peace, and that appears to be the case for now. We'll take a short break. There's more coming up.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
गोल्ड प्लस ऑप्टिमिस्टिक रिफ्लेक्टिव ग्लास लगाओ, धूप की गर्मी को दूर भगाओ और बिजली का बिल भी बचाओ।
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India, it matters to India, and it matters to me, and it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru, only on NDTV 24/7. In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
गोल्ड प्लस ऑप्टिमिस्टिक रिफ्लेक्टिव ग्लास लगाओ, धूप की गर्मी को दूर भगाओ और बिजली का बिल भी बचाओ।
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India, it matters to India, it matters to India, and it matters to me, and it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru, only on NDTV 24/7.
In the last 1 month, if you see, the share prices of Genzol Engineering has fallen more than 58%.
Why are the rating firms calling the debt payments as default?
We have two credible credit rating agencies on March 4th coming and downgrading the stock to D.
Statements are consistently being proven wrong, and transactions are being taken place which are different from what they were originally pictured to be.
The company claimed it would roll out 6,400 electric vehicles. But what it has rolled out is a shocking scam. Funds meant for the project were funneled allegedly back to the promoters, the Junkie brothers. What did the money buy? Not EVs, of course, but a lavish flat in Gurgaon's luxurious DLF Carmelias.
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims? Know Your Company, powered by NDTV Profit Research, shines a light on the biggest stock market movers.
More news that matters.
Big exclusive. Tulsi Gabbard
gunned down by Pakistan-backed cowards.
When you interact with people on ground, you're able to reflect their sentiments much better.
More debates that shake the system. More exclusives.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
दिल की गहराइयों से खैर मकदम करता हूं। देर आए दुरुस्त आए, लेकिन चलिए आखिरकार पाकिस्तान के डीजीएमओ ने फ़ोन उठा के हमारे डीजीएमओ से बात करके दोबारा सीज़ फायर जम्मू कश्मीर और बाकी इलाकों में कायम किया। अब मौजूदा जम्मू कश्मीर की हुकूमत की अब जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि जहां जहां नुकसान हुआ है नुकसान का हम मुआयना करें।
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
A show of solidarity with the armed forces. Scores of youth thronged the Government Medical College Hospital in Jammu to donate blood for those injured in Pakistani shelling. The blood donation campaign witnessed overwhelming participation from young citizens, many of whom stood in long queues at the hospital.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I'm bringing that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti, also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
India's IT capital is always bustling, a city full of startups, stories and surprises. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru. Only on NDTV 24/7. In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, Your new home for global news is here.
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24/7.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru. Only on NDTV 24/7.
In the last 1 month, if you see, the share prices of Genzol Engineering has fallen more than 58%.
Why are the rating firms calling the debt payments as default?
We have two credible credit rating agencies on March 4th coming and downgrading the stock to D.
Statements are consistently being proven wrong, and transactions are being taken place which are different from what they were originally pictured to be.
The company claimed it would roll out 6,400 electric vehicles. But what it has rolled out is a shocking scam. Funds meant for the project were funneled allegedly back to the promoters, the Junkie brothers. What did the money buy? Not EVs, of course, but a lavish flat in Gurgaon's luxurious DLF Carmelias.
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims? Know Your Company, powered by NDTV Profit Research, shines a light on the biggest stock market movers.
More news that matters.
Big exclusive. Tulsi Gabbard gunned down by Pakistan-backed coward.
Hello everyone, this is The Last Word and I'm Maria Shakil. After 4 days of hostilities that alarmed the world, India and Pakistan have agreed to a ceasefire, stopping all military action as of 5 p.m. India confirmed the ceasefire shortly after US President Donald Trump announced it on his Truth social platform. India said that it was the Pakistan DGMO who initiated the call this afternoon, and after which
discussions took place and an understanding was reached. Minutes after India announced a full and immediate ceasefire with Pakistan after days of missile, drone and artillery attacks, we heard Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar issue a stern message for harbors of terror. He said, and I quote him, "India has consistently maintained a firm and uncompromising stance against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. It will continue to do so." The ceasefire comes a day after Pakistan targeted Indian air bases. India chose its targets carefully. Those are the visuals coming in of Prime Minister Modi in that meeting with Raksha Mantri, National Security Advisor, other officers of the Indian Armed Forces. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is present as well. Foreign Secretary is present as well. This is the first meeting which is being chaired by the Prime Minister after the ceasefire announcement which has come in. Remember, India this morning launched a series of attacks against Pakistan air bases, and the objective was to cripple Pakistan's capability to launch aerial attacks using drones and fighter jets. And the attacks on these key Air Force bases had actually had the capacity certainly of crippling Pakistan's aerial mobility. And shortly after the breakthrough, India had warned that any act of terror will be considered an act of war. We will be staying on those visuals because Prime Minister Modi's meeting with the Defence Minister, with External Affairs Minister and others becomes very, very crucial at this juncture. What is the big message that will be carrying forward from this will become important again. Let's listen in now to the Foreign Secretary and the MOD briefing which happened earlier today.
Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours. Thank you.
Several attempts were made by Pakistan on spreading a misinformation campaign, as we have seen for the last few days. There were attempts made to say that our S-400 at a northern base was destroyed, which was completely false, and that it was destroyed by a JF-17, it was a false information. Also, that the BrahMos installation was attacked and it was destroyed was false. The destruction of airfields at Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Bhuj, Nalia, etc. was also a false claim. The forward ammunition dump at Chandigarh and Beas are also fit and fine, and we showed you these in the photographs in the morning briefing today. Also, there was a certain different way of miscampaign that Pakistan conducted by its press conferences, which was conducted in a manner which was completely misleading and devoid of facts. Pakistan has been spreading fabricated allegations that the Indian Armed Forces have targeted mosques. Let us make this very clear here, that India is a secular nation and the Indian Armed Forces are a reflection of our constitutional values. We hold every place of worship of all faiths in the highest regard. Our operations have been aimed exclusively at terrorist camps and facilities being used for anti-India activities. No religious sites, I repeat, no religious sites have been targeted by the Indian Armed Forces. Over the past few days, as we have seen, Pakistan has suffered very heavy and unsustainable losses after it has given us an unprovoked attack on our installations. It has suffered losses in both land and air. There has been an extensive damage to the crucial Pakistani air bases like Skardu, Sargodha, Jacobabad, and Bholari. In addition, a loss of AD weapon system and radars made the defense of Pakistani airspace untenable. Across the line of control, extensive and precise damage to military infrastructure and command control centers and logistics installations. In addition to that, 2 military personnel had led to complete breakdown of its defensive and offensive capability and also Pakistani morale.
And joining me now is Shivarur straight from Srinagar. We also have Aishwarya Jain tracking Prime Minister's meeting very closely. Shiv, I'm coming to you first, because government sources are saying clearly that this is a conditional ceasefire only on kinetic action, and Pakistan still has water, trade, diplomatic and financial sanctions. So clearly, as far as the messaging which is going from the government of India is that if there is any kind of violation now onwards, it will be seen as an act of war.
Absolutely correct, Maria. I think India is signaling very unconditionally that this ceasefire has been on its terms. It's because Pakistan requested the ceasefire. The Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan, a full 9 hours after some of the highest kinetic actions that India has taken against Pakistani military bases, 11 of them in all across the country, is when the DGMO of Pakistan decided to pick up the phone, dial India and ask for that ceasefire. A cumulative effect of kinetic actions plus all of those diplomatic measures that you mentioned, as well as the Indus Water Treaty, had clearly worn Pakistan down. Now, this may not be a time, for any kind of national gloating, as it were, but never should we ever lose sight of the fact that all of this began with a terrorist attack in which 26 innocents were butchered by Pakistan-sponsored terrorists. And keeping that in view, the fact that India has, wrangled a ceasefire after Pakistan came to it, obviously under great pressure of these military strikes on its most strategic assets in different parts of the country, has meant that India has agreed to a ceasefire from a position of strength. Very importantly, that you pointed out that the Indus Water Treaty, perhaps the most unsung of Indian actions against Pakistan, has had a very, very deep effect on the Pakistani psyche, politically, diplomatically, and even culturally, given that, it had never been imagined that water would be cut off. But I think the prospect of, a terrible energy crisis, a food crisis, a farming crisis in that country meant that Pakistan was already on the back foot before these kinetic actions actually began. And the drone strikes were actually something they needed to sell to their domestic audience in order to look strong. So net, I believe that India has, negotiated this ceasefire from a position of power, from a position of advantage, and has very tellingly pointed out that only kinetic and military actions are stopping right now. All of the other decisions continue to remain active.
All right, let me bring in Aishwarya. Aishwarya, the message that has come in from Prime Minister Modi's new doctrine, it is India's modern security doctrine, which has been firmly put on for the world to see, that it is swift, surgical, and unapologetically assertive. India can protect its citizens, and if there is an act of terrorism which emanates from its neighborhood, then they should be prepared for retaliation of this nature.
Well, India remains watchful. While the ceasefire offers temporary relief from rising tensions, the Indian military's statement underscores that peace will be maintained only if Pakistan refrains from provocation, and India will remain watchful, asserting that future threats will be met with forceful and immediate retaliation. Remember what Colonel Qureshi also stated during that press conference, that India will not tolerate misinformation, false propaganda, or any aggression. Forces will remain strong, alert, and fully prepared, and therefore the reason perhaps those visuals on our screens where Prime Minister Narendra Modi chairing that high-level meeting, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, NSA Ajit Doval, along with all the three service chiefs being given a strong message from the Prime Minister that our forces should remain on strong alert and they should be fully prepared because there has been, of course, a mistrust with Pakistan. We all know that what is the history with the Pakistan, and therefore the reason perhaps on one side there is temporary relief, ceasefire, but Indian armed forces and Indian dispensation will be always on alert, and there will be no, such case that will be dealt. Of course, the message was loud and clear in the earlier meeting as well that if any sort of future terrorism activity will be done from the Pakistani side, from their terror hubs, then it will be considered as an act of war in India, and India will respond accordingly.
Aishwarya and Shiv, thank you so much for joining us. Let's bring in the guests who are joining us at this hour. We have Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat, Lieutenant General Rajendra Singh is a former DG Infantry, Swasti Rao is geopolitical and foreign policy expert. We have Elizabeth Threlkeld joining us from Washington, D.C. She is a senior fellow and director of the South Asia program at the Simpson Center. I'm going to begin with you, Elizabeth. What, according to you, has happened today in terms of the ceasefire? Donald Trump has taken to, Truth Social to claim credit for what was the role of US administration, but India is clear that it was on the request of the Pakistanis, the DGMO of Pakistan, that a call was initiated and then things move ahead.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. I think the big picture here is I don't want to get too caught up in who necessarily was behind this, who said what to who, what the timing was. I think the important thing to remember is that a ceasefire looked somewhat unlikely just 12 hours ago, 24 hours ago, right? This has been the most significant escalation that we've seen between the two sides in several decades. So, I have to go on the same set of facts or same set of statements that you do. My understanding is that the U.S. was involved, and I think we've seen statements coming out from the president, from the Secretary of State over the last several days that back that up. But regardless, bottom line is this is a positive development, and hopefully we can kind of catch our collective breath and really start to ask important questions about what happens next so that we don't find ourselves in a similar situation going forward.
A word now on the role of US. We were expecting, some movement, particularly after Saudi Arabia, Saudi minister was in Islamabad, the movement which happened with regards to the foreign minister of Iran as well. But it certainly seems that US, which has that lever over Pakistan, used it rather effectively.
So, this is, I think, something that we will continue to learn a little bit more about in the coming days. It has just been a couple hours since this was announced. But I think here it's also important to recognize that it takes two to tango. And so looking for more information on what those conversations looked like between the US and India as well, I think is a key part of this puzzle, right? Because outside of this immediate crisis context, there is a hugely important US-India defense partnership. We work with India closely on a broad range of issues. And so I think going forward, one question that I'll be looking to ask and analyze is what, if any, impact this crisis has on that broader set of issues, or if the two countries are able to move on and move forward, for example, with the trade deal and the other elements of the partnership, which I think would be a positive for both sides.
All right, Ambassador Dogra, your thoughts on the ceasefire?
Well, firstly, it's not ceasefire. It's just holding the guns, so to speak, that both sides have agreed that they will observe the stoppage of arms activities till further notice. And further notice is the next telephonic talk between the two DGMOs on 12th, 2 days from now. But more than that, one is the good intentions, whether they'll continue over the next 2 days, and what thereafter, because DGMOs have a limited role, which is technical in nature. that the two countries have agreed not to fire at each other, and let's do all we can to maintain that status. So 12th is that line where they will sort of assess whether it has been carried out in letter and spirit. But the bigger task is what happens thereafter. Would there be a sort of meetings between the two countries to work towards a ceasefire that is longer lasting? Would there be a meeting that also ensures that India's concerns over terrorism, after all, terrorism has not been wiped out of Pakistan. There are 80 to 90 terrorists who are still operating in Jammu and Kashmir as per our assessment. And the Pakistani authorities have repeatedly said that we will use terror. That is before today. So the threat exists. And what happens if there's another big terror attack on India? Do we go back to the square one? So there are many imponderables, and the biggest question mark is Pakistan's record in history. Starting from 1947-48, Pakistan has not kept up any agreement which favors India, whereas India has a record of honoring agreements, most principally Indus Waters Agreement, where it has starved Indians of water but ensured that Pakistan luxuriates in plenty of water. So I think we also have to look at the record of what happened, for example, after 47-48, what happened in 1965 when we gave up Haji Pir Pass, which is now the route for most terrorists to come in, or what happened during Simla Agreement in 1972, where Bhutto, the moment he crossed the border, he said, "I've made a fool of that woman," meaning Indira Gandhi, that he had no intention of honoring any of the agreement. And the worst of it was, the most inhumane part of it was, we sent back 93,000 prisoners of war, one of the biggest sort of captures of so many POWs in history. But Bhutto ensured that the POWs Pakistan had captured rotted in jail, so much so that when he was in prison, he wrote, and I've quoted it in my book, he wrote that my heart cries when I hear their pain and their cries in the night. So the fact is that the same man who was in power at that before then ensured that there was deception and there was not a gentleman's honoring of the agreement he had reached in Simla. And the list goes on. I can quote chapter and verse on this. So I think we have to be cautious, we have to be careful, and the threat of terrorism will not easily go away unless ISI mends its ways and ensures that all terrorists are brought to book, handed over to India, and the chapter is closed and done away with.
And Ambassador Dogra, since you say that it's only about the guns being put down for the moment, and it's not really a truce or a ceasefire per se, let me bring in General Singh on this. General Singh, top government of India sources are telling us, and this came in a few hours ago, that any future act of terror will be considered an act of war against India. India, so far, in this entire 72 hours of turbulence that we saw, escalation coming in from Pakistan, aggression coming in from Pakistan, had maintained that it was not really technically declared a war. It was seen as war-like situation. But if there is another act of terror which happens, certainly we do not hope that it ever happens, then it will be seen as an act of war. I think that distinction that is being made here becomes important even as we talk about this operational truce which has come in.
Yes, Maria, you're right. Before I come to the aspect of what these rules of engagement the government had announced in the morning, to say that any act of terror henceforth will be considered as an act of war. I think we need to spend about 15 seconds in seeing as to what all has happened. What has happened is that Pakistan was in a bad state, economically, security-wise. Its situations in Baluch and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa front, and their army chief, who is a radical by himself, then decided to strike by using terrorists in Pahalgam. Thereafter, our government took a very firm stance, adopted a number of diplomatic and economic measures, and also suspending the Indus Water Treaty, and then went in to strike the terrorist camp with 100% accuracy. 100%. 9 terrorist camps were struck, and we were able to bring down about 90 to 100 of these terrorists. Now, in the background of this, Pakistan reacted with nearly 400 drones on the first night, and hardly any of those drones reached their target. Our air defense was superb. Our troops were alert on the ground. Our system of countering these actions by Pakistan was good. The same thing was repeated by them the next night also, and the result was same and similar. We were able to ensure that hardly any damage was caused to any of our air installations. On the Pakistan or from the Indian side, the situation was totally different. What happened was that we chose our targets correctly. We chose our targets with the suitable or with well thought out precision, and were able to strike about 9 to 11 of these air bases, air defense establishments and radars. And we degraded them the first night, and we nearly destroyed them the second night. In such a scenario, Pakistan had no other option but to crumble. And they were in a kind of a situation that in the morning there were reports coming that the Prime Minister of Pakistan is holding a meeting of their national atomic command structure, and such kind of threats were being put, which clearly showed that Pakistan military was in a very bad shape. In this backdrop, the efforts of United States and efforts of Saudi Arabia, coupled with the pressure which Indian armed forces had exerted on them, I think really forced them to ring up the DGMO at 3:30 today and seek for a suspension of any military actions from 5 o'clock today. And I think the result of all this is that we have really nearly achieved whatever we were aiming to achieve. That is to send a message to Pakistan that don't try this with us. Otherwise, you will have to pay a heavy price.
Absolutely.
Pakistan seems to have learned this lesson. Whether it will actually reform tomorrow, only the time will tell.
But the message has been sent to the world and of course to Pakistan that if there is an act of terror, then it will be responded with this kind of airstrikes right inside Pakistan, where the terror camps will be destroyed. Indian armed forces are fully equipped to carry it out because they believe in
Yes.
protecting their own citizens. Swasti Rao, when Operation Sindoor, I mean, it all begins with Operation Sindoor, and of course, then there was that retaliation and aggression from Pakistan, another round which played out between India and Pakistan this morning. So, what is being communicated here? Do you think India has effectively managed to send that message that India can protect its citizens, and when it comes to seeking accountability and justice, that has happened?
Good evening, Maria. So very clearly, there's way too much conjecture in the air, and basically everybody is simply conjecturing and speculating. So we must sort of somewhere acknowledge the fact that nobody really knows either the military strategy or the factors that perhaps led to the decision that led to the two DGMOs, talking to each other. I mean, I would just be a little reserved and conservative and say that, yes, I do not know the whole situation. Nobody knows. We have had keyboard warriors, people coming and speculating things all last, 3-4 days. But frankly, we have to bear in mind that nobody really knows. We should be waiting for official sources. Now, secondly, you asked for my opinion. As far as my opinion goes, I think we have been unequivocally successful in conveying to Pakistan that this is not a country that believes in strategic restraint, especially when, a country like Pakistan that harbors terrorism into India as a matter of state policy, I mean, through its proxies, continues to raise the stakes. So what happened in Pahalgam is not okay and will not be tolerated. And that point has been made by Operation Sindoor, which were unprecedented. It was after 1971, the first ever time that we struck Pakistani so deep. Okay, so that is a point, and that is going to go down in history as one of the turning points in how India's policy towards war on terror, its own war on terror, has evolved. There are no doubts about that, and I'm 100% sure about it. Now, linking it to the other thing, which is that if you link it to the other picture, the larger picture, which is that a state which has a toxic mindset like Pakistan, we have to talk about their regenerative capacity to harbor terrorism inside India. Now, you may argue that whatever has happened by way of Operation Sindoor and the aftermath, and whatever led to the DGMOs exchanging a cessation of military activity, and I agree, there was a point here raised that the DGMO level is a different level. It is not even the chief of staff level. Okay, so those who don't know that it is tactical, and frankly, it should we should have waited for the political leadership to actually announce anything of substance, which might happen on 12th of May or not. We will have to see. But coming back, and let me just make this broader point about Pakistan's ability. See, one strike is not going to cure Pakistan of their mental illnesses. We have to raise the stakes, of course. We have to tell them that you don't dare do something like a Pahalgam again on us. But does that mean that we are also going to deter Pakistan from all the cross-border violations, targeting our paramilitary, military armed forces? Pahalgam happened in April 2025, but since 2023, we've been losing men. Okay, so we have to sort of look at the broader security strategy and how we want to, do that. And to that, my simple point is, I think a much more constructive discussion that the strategic community can have now is that what are the key takeaways? Yes, we have to speed up our acquisitions. Yes, we have to. It has somewhere shown that indigenous platforms like Akash, they have worked wonderfully well. We have to, speed up our ATAG, productions. There are so many cases where we have excellent weapons that external countries are buying, but we are not placing enough orders. I think we have to look there. We have to double down, triple down. I don't know how to sort of quantificate on that, but we just have to get the drone acquisition in order. That is the future that has been shown. We have also seen that Pakistan seems to have some kind of an ironclad support from China and Turkey. And that is something that India should worry about, because I think what not a lot of people are talking about here is that by whatever happened in the last 4 days, to be precise, please understand that from the Chinese perspective, this was the first time that the Chinese weapons were being battle tested. So this is also a kind of a takeaway for the Chinese that they will be using for improving upon.
Ms. Rao, also Turkish drones, all those drones which were sent towards India yesterday, which were neutralized by our defense system, was Turkish in nature.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the drones were Turkish, and the little distinction here, Maria, is that while the Turkish, drones and technology have been battle tested in Azerbaijan and then in Ukraine, the Chinese weapons have not really been battle tested. This is the first time. So the Chinese are going to be learning their lessons very quickly. That's the first point. And the second point is, what about military satellites? Chinese have been helping the Pakistanis with a very precise mapping of the entire territory. Okay, we have to, that's what I'm saying. So the most constructive part of this discussion is that what do we need to do? We need to get our national security grid in order. We need to look at our vulnerabilities. And as far as Pakistan is a kind of a pariah state anyway. But The thing is that our key takeaway is going to take us longer in this larger battle against Pakistan. On the one hand, terrorism is only one part, but this is also Pakistan that is backed by China. And then we have a Bangladesh. So I think the larger strategic picture certainly needs to be kept in mind. And as for other things, I would rather wait for 12th of May and see what developments are made. But yes, the fact that military activity on land, air, and sea have been stopped from both sides, at least until the next talks happen, they are a welcome step. We surely, we have taught Pakistanis a lesson that they would not forget easily.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Swasti Rao, Ambassador Dogra, Elizabeth, and Lieutenant General Rajendra Singh. We are slipping into a short break. We have two newsmakers also lined up for you. A quick break and then we return.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
India announces ceasefire with Pakistan. Sources say that Pakistan DGMO initiated call today. Sources also say it was direct talks between India and Pakistan. Indian forces speak about the ceasefire, say Pakistan spread misinformation. India's response was measured and responsible. Government sources share details on India-Pakistan truce, say it is only conditional. Water and diplomatic actions and sanctions stay. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chairs a meeting with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar.
That's huge. That is a biggie. It's out of it.
Gold Plus Clear Glass. Far ho ya near, sab kuch dikhe clear.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India, it matters to India, and it matters to me, and it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru, only on NDTV 24/7. In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24/7.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds. How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you
It's only operational in nature, which essentially means that the guns have been put down between the two nations. And as far as other areas are concerned, the sanctions against Pakistan, which is on trade front, on water front with regards to the Indus Water Treaty having been put on hold, will continue, is the big message that is coming in from this ceasefire which has been achieved, which is operational since 5 p.m. this evening. Of course, it was the Pakistani DGMO who sought that meeting with India, which was essentially a telephonic conversation initiated by them. Nazir Masoodi is joining us from Srinagar. Nazir, you know, as a journalist who has covered conflicts for years, what's your sense of the moment?
Well, ceasefire which is welcomed by one and all, and everybody was waiting for that. It is in nobody's interest to continue this conflict because there are never no clear winners in any war. And it has to end one day. Thank goodness it has ended sooner than later, and people have heaved a sigh of relief. But what it means politically, besides agreeing on ceasefire, which was announced by US President Donald Trump, and then there were two other statements by the Vice President, J.D. Vance, and then the Secretary of the State, where if there's an important thing, besides ceasefire, they have agreed to start talks on a broad set of issues at a neutral place. There would be different interpretation in Pakistan and India, that's obvious. But the fact is, when we talk about broad set of issues with regard to India and Pakistan, there are no prizes to guess what they are. So clearly, politics has started on this and will start. But till the time it was war against Pakistan or the war-like situation, fighting terror, entire country was united, backing the government. But we have already started seeing political opposition parties raising a red flag and questioning the government. That will start now, but that is like part of any democracy which is happening. But the important thing is that number one, that terrorists who are behind the killing of 26 people in Pahalgam, they are still at large. They have not been neutralized or tracked down so far. Number two, has India achieved the objectives it wanted to achieve after carrying out strikes inside Pakistan, or what followed later? There would be lots of discussions, talks, debates on this, what has been achieved, or the objectives which have been achieved, or were there any end game that was factored in before initiating this confrontation or attacking Pakistan. All these things would be factored in. People will talk about it. But for now, the big relief for the people that this war-like situation has ended, like effectively a war. Bombs will not fall in Srinagar, and people we can live, sleep this night without fear of, being attacked from Pakistan.
All right, so that's the good part of it, that citizens who have been facing the brunt, the civilians who have been facing the brunt can go home and have a peaceful sleep. Nazir, you can do the same. You have been reporting relentlessly for the last 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining us. And joining us on the special broadcast is Dr. Harshvardhan Shringla, former Foreign Secretary and former Indian Ambassador to United States. Ambassador Shringla, really appreciate your time. I'm speaking to you at a time when just a few hours ago there has been a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Of course, that announcement came in from the US, and then India went ahead and shared the details as well. There were several countries which were supposed to be playing the role of interlocutors, believed to be, because of the Saudis, arriving in India unannounced and then traveling to Islamabad. There was also this sense that Iranians could play the role as well.
No, absolutely. I think this is quite a sudden development. From what I understand, the Pakistan DGMO reached out to our DGMO and offered, a ceasefire. What we have is a stoppage of fire until the 12th of May and until the DGMOs meet. And so seems to be a sort of a temporary situation for the time being. But clearly, the Pakistanis have been prompted by the Americans, from what I can see, to take this step. Obviously, we have also been in touch. So it seems to be essentially, a combination of many factors.
Yes, would you also say, Ambassador, that India managed to communicate to the world rather effectively and emphatically that it can carry out an operation of this nature, which was called Operation Sindoor, and India managed to say that that when it comes to the second round, we saw the Pakistani military air bases being struck as well. So the message was loud and clear that how far can India go? India can go deep inside the mainland of Pakistan.
No, absolutely. I think Op Sindoor was a huge success from the point of view of a pinpointed strike against terrorists and terrorist infrastructure, both in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It not only, in many senses, was, avenged the memory of those of our citizens who were killed, in a cold-blooded manner in Pahalgam, but also served as a very stern warning and deterrence to Pakistan against using terrorism as an instrument of policy. So it was, I would say, a very successful exercise. After that, Pakistan escalated the situation by using kinetic actions to target military and civilian establishments across the border from the north to the west, and continue to do that on two subsequent nights. I think we obviously met any such Pakistani action with very, very firm resolve and counter actions. And I think the result of all of that is that Pakistan fully realized that as their air defense and other systems get degraded, as their ability to maintain the supplies that would be needed for a conflict of this nature would dry up, they did, I think, feel the need to work out a sort of a cessation of conflict. And so you see this in the form of this stoppage of fire on both sides.
So you're calling it very carefully a stoppage of fire on both the sides here, Ambassador. And would you also not say that, Operation Sindoor was more than just a military response? It was a strategic resolve, a defining moment for what was India's modern security doctrine. Prime Minister Modi's political will and his leadership has to be spoken about in terms of what he did in trying to send that message that India has managed to send a message that it is about a swift, surgical and unapologetically assertive security doctrine now.
Absolutely. It means that there is a policy of Prime Minister Modi that every time you hit us, we'll hit you harder. So it happened in 2016, it happened in 2019, and it has happened this year. And God forbid, that any future actions are there, I think the gloves would be off. But what is important is to keep that pressure on Pakistan, keep it through the various diplomatic and economic means at our disposal, including the Indus Water Treaty provisions and many other means that we have. At the same time, I think we have to be very vigilant that Pakistan does not resort to cross-border terrorism again, and we have to have all the various measures in place, preemptive measures to ensure that they are kept in check in that regard.
A word on the role of the US. While there was a lot of anticipation as to what the Saudis could do, but the call that was made by Marco Rubio to General Asim Munir, was a message that that US understands who is really in charge and control of Pakistan.
Well, it's difficult to say because all the facts are not at our disposal, but everybody has done their bit to contribute in some ways to a better understanding of our position and to bring Pakistan around to understanding that there is no option for them but to climb down, from their position of escalating the conflict. But I think the final, of course, role was that of the United States, which is the preeminent power in the world even today, and they can bring the sort of pressures that are necessary to bear on a very recalcitrant I would say a state which is sometimes even outside the bounds of normal nationhood, to bring them in line.
How do you look at the role of IMF, which certainly, the sanctions in terms of what Pakistan managed to achieve through the IMF meeting yesterday? India abstained from the vote because the rules do not really permit a formal no, but India did convey its strong dissent that in terms of Pakistan military's role in the country's economic dominance, and how to expect any kind of transparency in the functioning of Pakistan may be expecting too much out of it.
Well, this is not the sanctioning of a loan or a facility. I think this is a tranche of an existing facility that was agreed to. So there is a 7 billion extended facility fund, out of which $1 billion was provided, and there is another, I think it's called a sustainability fund, for which another 1.3 billion was provided out of that existing fund that was already approved for Pakistan. I think there was not enough time for us to be able to lobby with the members to get a decision that was favorable. But I think we have made our point that Pakistan is can't be relied on with the proper use of its funds, and that there is a grave danger that the funds would be misused to support non-state actors, terrorists, and of course their military misadventures. I think if it comes up again, we should be able to make our point even more forcefully.
Okay, before I let you go, your final thought on what is appearing to be just a ceasefire at the moment. If there is an aggression from Pakistan, India will see that as an act of war.
Well, I would say that we haven't seen the end of this because, it is a stoppage of firing. But I think it all depends on Pakistan's, ability to keep its terrorists under check and not to indulge in any more, cross-border attempts at terrorism. And of course, as I said, I mean, the larger issue of dealing with Pakistan is still somewhere out there. We may not be involved in kinetic actions, but I think we will have to deal with the issue that is very much in our immediate neighborhood, which is how to deal with a country that's almost a failed state and one that is going to be a troublesome immediate neighbor.
Ambassador Shringla, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And joining us now on this broadcast is Dr. Mukesh Aghi, President and CEO of US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Dr. Aghi, really appreciate your time. As someone who understands the domain of international institutions and trade, how do you look at the ceasefire that has now been confirmed and of course, which is now in place since 5 p.m. today?
Well, you have to look at both from the perspective of Pakistan and India. For Pakistan, this is not a sustainable war. Its economy is in a mess, almost bankruptcy. IMF just gave them $1 billion+ as a loan to sustain itself. So it could not go beyond 1 week of high escalation with India itself. From India's perspective, you have to look at it has a robust economy which has crossed over $4 trillion in GDP. But more important is, as you see the recalibration of trades taking place, one thing it is important to understand that while the stress point between India and China, between US and China stays on and the tariff stays on up to 100%, India and the US will strike a trade deal and most probably around 10% tariff reciprocal tariff between the two countries. So what happens is it drives US companies to look at India as a next manufacturing site. So it is important that there is a sense of peace in the region. It serves India's interest in the long term. But at the same time, India has made it very clear to Pakistan that the cross-border terrorism is not tolerable anymore. And this is not just India. After October 7th, Israel made it very clear. The rest of the world made it very clear. So I think overall it is a plus point for India. India comes out ahead as far as the regional conflict goes.
And would you agree that India has managed to communicate rather effectively and forcefully to the world that that it remains firm and its stand is uncompromising against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations? And Prime Minister Modi in particular has been speaking about anti-terror operations, and he has actually walked the talk through Operation Sindoor.
Absolutely. I think there is a level of tolerance which a nation can take. And I think India, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, has been able to take that. But I think he came out with a resolve that is, we will basically destroy the terrorist camps in Pakistan. And the armed forces of India were quite effective in their endeavor to destroy those camps itself. But the message has gone out that I think if you want to punch back, India will punch back much, much harder. It sends a message that you cannot leverage non-state actors anymore to drive your foreign policy. So hopefully, I believe that Pakistan got the message. I think the message is very clear in Washington, D.C. also. D.C. realized that India has a resolve and it has to step in and convey to Pakistan it makes more sense to have a ceasefire than continue with the belligerent action against India.
Do you think the sanctioning of the loan, the announcement of which came in 24 hours ago, has questioned the effectiveness of institutions such as IMF, the International Monetary Fund, if they are actually funding terrorism in a way, because they are not really holding Pakistan accountable for all the money which is being given by institutions like IMF?
No, absolutely. You have to understand that this is a tranche of $7 billion loan which was sanctioned for Pakistan to have certain conditions on its deficit and on its exports and on its economic agenda itself. And I would not spend too much time or energy on $1 billion going to Pakistan, because as very, very small sum, it has not much of an impact. Yes, the messaging is very important. And I think India should basically endeavor to get back Pakistan on the gray list here. That will have a much, much stronger impact. And I think India did a very effective and efficient job communicating to the global community as to why it has taken the stance of fighting back terror. And I think that energy should be put into trying to put back Pakistan back on the gray list.
Would you say then that when India carried out Operation Sindoor 4 days ago, and it did tell the world that it's a victim of terror, Pakistan continues to be the aggressor here, and then it can actually fight back and protect its citizens?
I have to give credit to the Ministry of External Affairs. They basically went down with a very clear messaging to the global community, starting with the big fives down to the European Union and rest of the world. And the message was very clear. We are the victim, and we have been basically targeted on a religious basis. As Hindus, men were killed in front of their spouses and families itself. And this has to stop. And the world community came out supporting India's position. And more important, you have to understand is that when India retaliated, there was no objections from any of the countries. Yes, there were statements made that, hey, we need to get into some kind of a conversation. But at the same time, the world understood and empathized with India that it cannot continue to take in all these blows coming from cross-border terrorism to its citizens. So I think the Ministry of External Affairs and its team were very efficient, very effective in their messaging, and the message was conveyed. In fact, if you look at from President Trump down to France's president down to any other country. They came out supporting India's position to fight terror. And I think you have to understand very clearly the cross-border terrorism does not work anymore. We saw that after October 7th, how the Israelis went after the Hezbollahs, the Houthis, and Hamas itself. And I think India has to take the same position. So I would say the effectiveness of messaging by the Ministry of External Affairs to rest of the world was very, very successful.
Dr. Agi, and this is with regards to what Government of India sources are telling us, that this is a conditional ceasefire only on kinetic action, but as far as the trade, diplomatic and water sanctions are concerned, that is going to continue. How do you look at that development?
Which is true. I think basically, if you look at the overall strategy of India is basically to punish Pakistan. And yes, you do have immediate impact of destroying the terror camps. But in the long term, India has to very seriously look at the water diversion going into Pakistan, because unless there is some kind of a effective threat, which is economic, which has an impact on Pakistan, this process of the Pakistan army waging terror war in India will continue. So I think India has to seriously look at diverting the water. India has to seriously look at basically containing the trade, unless you have some change in behavior and posturing from the Pakistan side. Otherwise, I think what we'll see is continuous effort by the army to legitimize itself by invoking terror campaign on India. So I think we support, from that perspective, both economic and other aspect of punitive action by India to contain this terror.
All right, Dr. Mukesh Agi, really appreciate your time here on NDTV. That's all from me. Vishnu Shom joins you next to carry forward the news and updates.
तू ही तो है जिसकी सच्चाई वाली क्लैरिटी की वजह से मैं आज यहाँ हूँ।
गोल्ड प्लस सिल्वॉक्सी मिरर्स, ऐसी क्लैरिटी कि आपको सिर्फ सच नजर आए, चाहे कितने भी साल बीत जाएं।
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims? Know Your Company, powered by NDTV Profit Research, shines a light on the biggest stock market movers.
More news that matters.
Big exclusive. Tulsi Gabbard gunned down by Pakistan-backed cowards.
When you interact with people on ground, you're able to reflect their sentiments much better.
More debates that shake the system. More exclusives you won't find anywhere else. Not just another prime time. It's a prime time that's unmissable.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I'm bringing that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti, also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
India's IT capital is always bustling, a city full of startups, stories and surprises. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru. Only on NDTV 24/7. In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and
Good evening, welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. Today is a defining moment in the subcontinent's volatile history, we hope. Today, India and Pakistan, teetering on the brink of war, stepped back from catastrophe, agreeing to a ceasefire at 5 p.m. The United States played an important role, with President Trump announcing the breakthrough on Truth Social, claiming credit for mediating intense overnight talks. But make no mistake, direct communication between the Directors General of Military Operations was the linchpin. At 3:30 p.m., Pakistan's Director General of Military Operations reached out to India's, halting strikes and pleading for peace, a move underscored by America's pressure, tying Pakistan's IMF loan to compliance. This truce, born from the ashes of the Pahalgam terror attack, averts a military nightmare, yet tensions continue to simmer. There are some reports of firing continuing along the international border and the line of control. Presumably those will die down. Now, India's resolve remains ironclad. The Indus Waters Treaty, suspended after the attack, will not be revived. Government sources confirm all punitive measures, including trade and diplomatic sanctions, stay in place. As the Directors General of Military Operations prepare to talk again on the 12th of this month, the world watches, holding its breath. Peace hangs by a thread, but for now, courage and diplomacy, we hope, will have prevailed. A look at the headlines at this hour. India announces its ceasefire with Pakistan. The Director General of Military Operations from Pakistan initiated a call today. Direct talks have taken place between India and Pakistan. India says our response was measured and responsible in terms of the military actions we've taken today, and that Pakistan has consistently been spreading misinformation. Government sources say that the conditional truce is all that has been achieved, but so no firing at the moment, at least nothing sustained, but water and diplomatic actions do stay. The Prime Minister meets the National Security Advisor. Post the ceasefire, the Prime Minister meets all service chiefs. Well, joining us now, Vice Marshal Anil Khosla. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Firstly, sir, the broader theme over here, that quite unexpectedly, we have a ceasefire declaration between India and Pakistan. Did you expect this to happen so quickly?
Yeah, Vishnu, thank you for calling me. I am Marshal, not Air Vice Marshal.
Air Marshal.
Yeah, Vice Chief is the post which I retired, so it generally gets mixed up and becomes Air Vice Marshal. Yeah, so actually speaking, you're asking me whether I was expecting. I'll tell you frankly, I was telling all my friends yesterday that I think yesterday evening would have been called off. The Pakistan had an escape window available. They had, to their countrymen, they had, Pakistan Army had enough this thing to show, okay, I've done something, I can stand against India. And with that, moral this thing. He could have, I mean, there was a window still available. India was providing a window all the time. But I think they didn't take that window and decided to have one more boxing bout. And the last boxing bout, I think they realized that it is futile totally. And that's how it happened today. But I was expecting it yesterday.
Air Marshal, the number of air bases of Pakistan that we hit, pretty much all of them, including Skardu today, there is visible damage on runways in some of the Pakistani bases. The fact that we attacked their main, air base near Rawalpindi itself quite successfully, would continued military operations by the Pakistan Air Force have really been possible with the condition that we've left some of their facilities in?
Yeah, so we caused a considerable damage as reported by various sources. But time will tell actually what is the damage, and the whole fog of war, when it clears up, things will come up. But that's what will happen now. The media war will start, that I caused this much damage and we caused this much damage, these many casualties, these many aircraft down. But the bigger picture we should not lose sight of. What is the effect of this, whatever we have exchanged blows with each other? Has Pakistan learned a lesson? Will they change their policy of, pleading India by 1,000 cuts, supporting the terrorism? And the major thing is, what next if another attack happens? Like India has articulated very clearly in this ceasefire that any other further terror act will be treated as an act of war. So what next? Because we've been increasing the punitive action, the strategy of punitive strategy. So what next? Straight away, any the trigger happens, straight away war or what? So these are the issues we need to think about in a bigger picture.
Militarily, I think let's reflect on what happened today. Intense explosions, Srinagar, Jammu, Rajouri, Aknur, further down, Pathankot certainly. And yet our defenses were resilient. Our surface-to-air missile units, our anti-air artillery. How significant were the defenses that we had in preventing anything substantive by way of damage?
Yeah, so if you notice this time, so far the ground forces didn't have eyeball-to-eyeball sort of a contact and skirmishes, except for exchanging of fires across the LOC and IB, which was done very nicely by the army, destroying quite a few of the bunkers and other infrastructure near the LOC and IB. But most of the things were fought or punches were thrown at each other through the medium of air. In terms of long-range vectors, in terms of drone, whether for surveillance or with the armed. In the last bout, even the missiles were used, slightly higher weapons. So I think we were able, with our air defense did quite well, the integrated air defense, and not only kinetic, even non-kinetic anti-US systems, anti-drone systems. I think overall we did quite well. And the Indian air defense is growing as per the challenges which is facing. And I think if we continue, we are on the right path as far as strengthening and capability building of air defense is concerned.
Air Marshal, as we speak, there are some, worrying signs we're getting from Jammu and Kashmir. There have been ceasefire violations which have been reported, with the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah tweeting, what the hell just happened to the ceasefire? Explosions heard across Srinagar. So one would hope that these simmer down, that these die out. Perhaps the message hasn't gone through everywhere. Your initial reactions to the fact that there have been quite a few reports at this stage on ceasefire violations. Do you expect this to end?
So, as you rightly pointed out, maybe the information has not gone down to the last man. Or maybe some trigger-happy people are there who, in spite of this thing, are ignoring the on the pretext that we don't know as yet, or whatever it is, whatever the reason. In case it increases, then there is a problem. But if it dies down, it's good. And I'm sure that the hotlines are active now. And if it continues even at a smaller scale, the DGMOs and will talk and sort it out amongst themselves.
The warfare that we saw, the air warfare, is unprecedented in the subcontinent. Drone warfare, like elsewhere in the world, is now one of the dominant themes. Could you reflect on how the nature of the air battle between India and Pakistan has fundamentally altered warfare per se, in the subcontinent?
Yeah, so main difference is that, the initial attacks are by the long-range vectors and drones and rockets and either precision or otherwise, and long range also of different ranges. And idea is to overwhelm the enemy's air defense. And similarly, on the other side, the air defense side, it is becoming multiple umbrellas, integrated air defense is the word which is being coined by the strategists, which means is that you have sensors of various ranges and integrated with the weapons of various ranges, and these are all networked together, and you have some sort of artificial intelligence to give you some decision support metrics. So that is where air defense is heading, and not only subconventional, conventional, as well as hypersonic threats, as well as space threats. So air defense umbrella is really, expanding in a big way. And the air warfare, beginning, it happens with these long-range vectors. In case of a ground action, then the whole full-fledged conventional war starts. And what happens, like even in Russia-Ukraine, if you see, when the stamina runs out, then it becomes a long drawn, boxing match where both the boxers are tired, but they keep punching one another. So you do some action with long range vector, and then the opposition does a punitive strike with the long range vectors and missiles. So that is what long drawn affair it becomes.
All right, again, these reports of ceasefire violations coming in, explosions heard in Srinagar as well. Again, we just hope that, this dies down and that there are no forces in play in Pakistan who are, without coordination with their military leadership carrying all of this out. So that's something that's a bit of a concern. Do you believe, sir, at the end of it all, despite the way in which the Air Force acquitted itself in hitting terrorist targets, including the initial attacks a few days back, there are learning lessons as well?
Yeah, there are many lessons will come out, and I think all the forces will be dissecting the whole events which took place in the last 3 or 4 days, and detailed inventory of lessons will be, and they will be activated. But the issue which you brought out of these reports which are coming in, I only hope that it is not sponsored by the crazy, Pakistan army, which even after declaration of ceasefire by whatever means, and they're not doing it intentionally. I only hope that.
Well, there's a blackout in Firozpur, Hoshiarpur and Pathankot. Some reports of several explosions in Srinagar at this stage as well. We'll try and get NDTV's Shiv Arur up in a little while from now, but just sticking by the terms of the agreement itself. What do you make from the fact, sir, that the Indus Water Treaty remains in suspension? There has been no effort to resume the diplomatic relationship. Do you believe that India continues to hold fairly significant leverage over Pakistan?
Yeah, so the thing is, only ceasefire has been declared as yet. There have been no talks, there have been no discussions as yet. So once a ceasefire, like you're saying, you're yourself saying the whole lot of reports coming of this thing. So you can't trust the enemy. The trust has been totally broken. So it will take some time to the trust to build up, and also negotiations to take place for the things which have been done, and other means, economically, diplomatically. It's a multi-domain operation, and all those actions which have been taken to reverse it, it will not happen just by declaration of ceasefire. So I think we'll have to wait and see the trust-building measures. We'll have to see what Pakistan is doing, and thereafter, talk if they succeed. Then only slowly, gradually, the things will come back to normal, if at all.
All right, sir. Lovely to speak to you. Thanks very much for being with us. I'm joined at this stage by Daniel Block, Senior Editor of Foreign Affairs and a contributing editor at the Washington Monthly, Kawal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, General Subroto Saha, former member of the National Security Advisory Board, and General Raj Shukla as well. Thank you all very much for being with us. General Saha, let me come to you first. At this stage, there's this concern about ceasefire violations, and the only reason we are bringing this up is because it's not insignificant at this stage. Multiple explosions in Srinagar, apparently some drone activity as well. Could this simply be, elements of the Pakistani armed forces not having gotten the message so far?
Well, Vishnu, firstly, thanks. Secondly, I must tell you this small violations here and there. Let's not get distracted by them. There could be elements who do not want to obey orders and who have got so charged up, and there could be those who are ignorant of what is happening on the top. But there are larger issues here which we must be, discussing in this forum now. Historically, let's not get away from the fact that as a nation, we seem to be frittering away military gains, whether it was in 71 or in 99. What happens now, we'll have to wait and see. In a show earlier today, I'm glad you had brought out this point, will the terrorist infrastructure get dismantled because of what has happened? It's a big question. Will talks and terror go hand in hand because of what is happening? It's a very big question. The point is, we seem to have agreed to what the US wanted us to do. Now, how are we going to leverage this concession that we have made to the US? Let's make no mistakes. We have made a concession to the US. How are we going to leverage it in the context of the Indo-US Defense Technology Partnership? Because we have to be better prepared for the next time. Let's not forget, if today we have made an announcement that any act of terror is going to be an act of war in the future, i.e., we have to have the ability to retaliate at a much quicker pace than what we have done this time around. So leveraging this for the future, to my mind, is most important. The next thing we must tell the United States that, look, we are the only country that has been able to draw a range of Chinese arsenal into this so-called war that we have gone through. So look, we have brought in front of you what Chinese technological capabilities can or cannot do on the battlefield. So these are huge, contributions we have done to the larger geopolitical context, or the larger context of warfare, if you will. So, and let's not forget, we have actually bailed out Pakistan. I mean, okay, fine, a small component of this, which I think you have alluded to earlier in one of your programs today, that the liver seems to have been that the release of the IMF fund. Well, by all means, that is true. But how has India helped Pakistan? We have prevented them the cost of the war. We have helped them by saving the potential cost of hitting at their economic targets. I mean, the fact is, because of all this, Munir has been spoken to by the United States. When they spoke to their prime minister, he could do nothing. Now, Munir has been spoken to, he has taken the decision. We have elevated Munir's status within Pakistan and made him, larger than life. That radicalized, deranged chap has been given larger than life status because of India. So now the point is, we have helped Pakistan, we have, helped the US, given them this status of being able to mediate. How are we going to leverage it? I think these are issues that we need to consider and see how we want to now exploit them, now that, the situation on the border, sooner or later it will calm down. Having said that, past experience of ceasefire, when Pakistan has announced it himself, Musharraf had announced a unilateral ceasefire. For all of us who have served on the line of control, you have met me several times on the line of control.
Yes.
You know how fragile that ceasefire that Pakistan announces. On the line of control, the ceasefire that they agree or they announce has virtually, literally no meaning. So let's take it for whatever it is worth. Let's try and stabilize the situation for whatever it is worth. What impact it will have on the terrorist infrastructure, I have my serious doubts. But then, as I said, let's leverage the situation for what it can do to help us to deal with acts of terror in the future. Thank you.
Jalsa, thanks very much. I'm joined by Shiv Arur in Srinagar. Shiv, these very disconcerting reports coming in of explosions in Srinagar now, ceasefire violations. In fact, we've got these images. It's happening now. Those are tracer bullets up in the skies. It's been a day when we've seen intense fighting, and then there has been so much hope, and yet explosions once again. Shiv, what's happening?
Vishnu, for the last 20 minutes, there have been engagements in the airspace not very far from where we're reporting here in Srinagar. Omar Abdullah, the Chief Minister, has just put out a very, very surprised tweet. You can hear it right now on my cameras. You can hear the gunfire. This is all ground fire. You can hear it, Vishnu. I'm going to pause periodically so our viewers can hear it for themselves.
Yes, please.
Big one there. Second big one. Chief Minister.
We can
more.
hear it.
Okay.
Just pause for a second. Let
The
us
Chief
listen to this.
Minister, yeah.
Carry on. We can hear this very clearly. It's non-stop. The anti-aircraft fire.
Vishnu, for the last 20 minutes, this firing has been going on. The Chief Minister, Umar Abdullah, has also acknowledged it. He's put out a tweet saying, what the hell is the ceasefire about? He's just heard these explosions. They're being heard all over Srinagar, clearly. Even the Chief Minister has spoken about them. This is by... Okay, it's getting more intense. It's getting more intense. There are 3 big explosions that have just happened. This is the longest drone engagement I've ever heard in Srinagar so far since the last 2 days. Let's just listen to it. It's non-stop. Tracer fire, more tracer fire. Okay, these could...
All right, we can hear the sounds right now. We'll have to be a bit careful with deferred visuals.
Non-stop tracer fire.
Right. So carry on with what you're saying. We will. The images on our screen are deferred. We need to stick to deferred visuals. But we do take your point. You're in the middle of a scene right now, a situation. But carry on with the point that you're mentioning. Yeah.
Yes, we're going to be very careful about what we're describing right now, Vishnu. This is a live anti-drone engagement that is taking place. It's a very high-energy engagement, which seems to suggest that there are multiple drones. This is, remember, incredibly over 3 hours since that ceasefire was announced and came into effect. And you're seeing by far the biggest drone actions over the city of Srinagar. What this means for the ceasefire and beyond, I'm not even able to speculate right now because this is Srinagar literally under attack by drones. That's something that we can safely say right now. There is a blackout in the city. We haven't heard any sirens yet, but these seem to be tracer fire. Probably, some of the ground guns that we've been discussing before, the ZU-23s and the L-70s. The big, loud, dull thud that you heard was probably the L-70, and the rapid fire was probably the ZU-23 ground guns engaging these unmanned aircraft. What exactly these drones are, we don't know. More. See, it's continuing even now.
Yeah, and that was a very big one which we heard. Shiv, hold on. We'll try and get a couple of reactions.
Echoing all across the city. Yeah.
Yeah, point taken. And Omar Abdullah has tweeted that to him, this is no ceasefire. The air defense units in the middle of Srinagar just opened up. All right, we'll come back to you in a moment, Daniel Block. That's a matter of huge concern. But assuming that this does die out, that perhaps some units haven't received, word that there's a ceasefire in place. If we just keep that aside for just a moment, what was the role of America in getting India and Pakistan to talk peace?
I think we're still trying to figure out exactly what role the United States played. The United States says it's played a rather large role, and the Pakistani officials have said that the United States did play a role. They thanked the United States for mediating. That said, there are many countries, obviously, that wanted the fighting to stop and that were in contact with both India and Pakistan about getting to some kind of ceasefire, which hopefully will last. Hopefully, as you're saying, we're not seeing violations here that will lead it to collapse before it even really takes effect. So I think that both governments came under substantial international pressure to put a stop to the fighting. That said, I imagine the United States played a large role. Historically, the United States plays a large role in stopping these types of conflicts, in getting the parties to a ceasefire, and helping them frame it so that they can both claim a kind of victory and then move on. And that's part of why the United States maintains relations with both Pakistan and India, so that it can serve as a kind of arbiter in these.
Okay. Ambassador Civil, obviously no one wants war, we want peace. But I think the points made by General Shah made a lot of sense when he said that do we have any guarantee that the terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan has been destroyed? And the answer is no, there is no guarantee. So in as much as there is a ceasefire, hopefully, which comes into effect properly, what guarantee is there that Pakistan is going to behave itself?
Well, not only there is no guarantee, I think Pakistan is not going to behave itself because there are structural difficulties in Pakistan. One is the Chief of Army Staff himself, the present Chief of Army Staff, who is extremely bigoted, very anti-Hindu, very Islamic in character. And that, of course, means that his animosity, emotional animosity towards India will always influence his thinking and his military approach to India. Beyond that, terror cannot be wiped out so easily because it's a product not only of Pakistani army nurturing these groups, but the society at large also supporting them. So entire cleanup of the society is needed, and that's not going to happen. You need a change of mindset in Pakistan, the society especially. And that's also not going to happen overnight or in the foreseeable future. The point is that if the idea of Pakistan is based on opposing the idea of secular India, then we have a problem. And this is not going to get resolved so easily. Now, what is important is that we have actually now created a new paradigm in terms of dealing with Pakistani, abetted, supported, sponsored terrorism. We have now really gone ahead and, to my mind, remarkably hit the basis of these terror groups in Pakistan in 9 different locations. This is a very bold step we took, knowing that Pakistan is bound to react, as Pakistan was obliged to. And that also meant that progressively the situation was getting escalated. But right at the start, we have said we have no desire to escalate. We want to eliminate terror. We are not targeting the Pakistani military, so giving a chance to the Pakistani military establishment hold back. But I don't think we thought seriously that this would be the case, because this was a great blow to the prestige of the Pakistan army, that India could, from their point of view, attack Pakistani territory. And so they were bound to react. And they were getting the worst end of the stick, and therefore they naturally appeal to the United States and others to step in and see if they can broker some kind of a ceasefire. And the United States is happy to do so, as they have done in the past at the time of Clinton and everything else. They want to keep Pakistan afloat. They still have use for Pakistan in the region. And one of the use of Pakistan is to maintain some kind of a strategic stability in the region. And I think Britain is very much part of this, because Pakistan is essentially a creation of the Anglo-American bloc. And its survival has a lot to do with the support they've been getting from this bloc over the years. And then the center has a certain view of Pakistan's role, which they are not going to give up that easily. So I'm afraid that we won the first round, but whether we can keep winning these rounds will depend a great deal on what happens to Pakistan internally. But my own feeling is that if Pakistan was really to change its entire thinking towards India, then Pakistan will begin to crack from within. And if the Pakistan military gets defeated, then the only glue that keeps the country united will begin to get unglued, and Pakistan could begin to break up. We've seen what's happening in Balochistan and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and even in Sindh. So there are deep internal fissures in Pakistan, which the Pakistani military, the Punjabi Pakistan military is preventing from happening. So let's see what happens. I'm not very hopeful. And the last point I want to make is that whatever steps we have taken, the 9 non-kinetic steps should be maintained. There should be absolutely no give on that for the foreseeable future. And then we will see in course of time how things develop, how Pakistan reforms itself internally. I don't have much hope that they will do so, but nevertheless, we have to live with this neighbor and protect ourselves. And the last point before I end is that we have to develop our military capabilities even more. To the extent that the disparity in the strength between the two countries is so big and so large that Pakistan will think twice before they sponsor terror groups,
I don't think there's an
knowing
option.
that they'll be hit very hard.
No, I agree with you. I don't think there's an option to that. General Shukla, just in terms of the fighting which we've seen over the last 3 days, it's redefined, warfare in the subcontinent. Never since 1971, think about it, has India hit Pakistan so hard, and never has Pakistan since 1971, other than in terror attacks, come in and use conventional forces to try and hit us. Could you reflect on the military action which we've seen in the last couple of days?
Yeah, Vishnu, I was listening very carefully to Mr. Sibbal and to my former boss, General Saha, but I'm inclined to take a different view. I think this time it has been a significant departure from the past. And let me tell you why very quickly in my view. Mr. KPS Gill once said that, we will win this war on terror, not merely by running after terrorists, but by overwhelming the adversary. I think Op Sindoor has converted much of that wisdom into strategic reality, exposed not only major deficits, chinks in the Pakistani armor, but to my great delight, also of its collaborator, China. What happened to HQ-9? Look what happened to the J-10s and the J-17s. So I think it is a significant, there have been significant military payoffs, and India has rediscovered the utility of force. Let me make 3-4 more points. You see, I thought that the escalatory ladder was leveraged very astutely, almost brilliantly. You see, what we did this time, while confining our attacks on the terror ecosystem, we expanded the swath very boldly from Muzaffarabad to Punjab. Punjab has never been hit. Rawalpindi, Raiwind, Bahawalpur. I was GOC 10 Corps. My opposite number was GOC 30, which is Bahawalpur. After Operation Swift Resort, General Rawat was in my headquarters, and this Markaz was a veritable training academy for terrorists. It had firing ranges, mine ranges, obstacle courses. We've hit that. And look, we've seen new normals in our strategic outlook. We've gone and hit Punjab. We have done, after Parakram and 2611, the military instrument, Indian military instrument, appeared relatively blunt. This time it has been a great instrument of precision strike. What are the objectives? It is a very strong signaling to Pakistan that, listen, this nuclear schoolboy, nuclear bluff, and under its cover, this terror rampage will not work. Should you wish to persist with terror, you will have to face India's conventional might. So we've called the bluff of nuclear use. We have re-established deterrence. It may not be permanent, but I think there are major payoffs. We should not undermine the payoffs. Of course, the other lessons are there. Given the size of our economies, we should have combat overmatch with Pakistan. And much of it can come in far greater technological investments. This is only the beginning of the bump. We will have far greater challenges with China. So as our foreign policy gets more muscular, our instrument of force must not only be nourished, but in the highest state of readiness. As General Saha was saying, next time, if there is a terror strike at 2:30, by 9 in the evening, an attack should go in.
No, I take your point. I take your point.
I do think it's a significant departure from the past.
Sure. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. What I'd like to do at this juncture is actually listen in to that press conference and what was announced earlier on, because there was a sense of hope. It all came in a very quick fashion. Remember, we woke up this morning to massive explosions all across the front, from Kashmir in the north all the way down to parts of Gujarat as well. There were multiple attacks on Indian airfields. India responded. We've hit more than 8 Pakistani air bases. Several runways have been made inoperational. Then, as a result of talks which were taking place and talks which were encouraged by the United States, there was this dramatic phone call by the Director General of Military Operations in Pakistan to his Indian counterpart. That took place at about 3:30, 3:45 in the afternoon. And by 5 p.m., there was a ceasefire in place. It was almost unbelievable. But in the last exactly half an hour or so, or 40 minutes or so, there are reports of explosions being heard in Srinagar. One would hope that these die down because it doesn't make sense for Pakistan to commit to a peace. Statements by their foreign minister, statements by their Director General of Military Operations, and then carry on in quite this manner. So that's something that we need to look out for very, very closely. But let's listen into what happened earlier on today.
Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours. Thank you.
Several attempts were made by Pakistan on spreading a misinformation campaign, as we have seen for the last few days. There were attempts made to say that our S-400 at a northern base was destroyed, which was completely false, and that it was destroyed by a JF-17, it was a false information. Also that the BrahMos installation was attacked and it was destroyed was false. The destruction of airfields at Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Bhuj, Nalia, etc. was also a false claim. The forward ammunition dump at Chandigarh and Beas are also fit and fine, and we showed you these in the photographs in the morning briefing today. Also, there was a certain different way of miscampaign that Pakistan conducted by its press conferences, which was conducted in a manner which was completely misleading and devoid of facts. Pakistan has been spreading fabricated allegations that the Indian armed forces have targeted mosques. Let us make this very clear here, that India is a secular nation and the Indian armed forces are a reflection of our constitutional values. We hold every place of worship of all faiths in the highest regard. Our operations have been aimed exclusively at terrorist camps and facilities being used for anti-India activities. No religious sites, I repeat, no religious sites have been targeted by the Indian armed forces. Over the past few days, as we have seen, Pakistan all has suffered very heavy and unsustainable losses after it has given us an unprovoked attack on our installations. It has suffered losses in both land and air. There has been an extensive damage to the crucial Pakistani air bases like Skardu, Sargodha, Jacobabad and Bholari. In addition, a loss of AD weapon system and radars made the defense of Pakistani airspace untenable. Across the line of control, extensive and precise damage to military infrastructure and command control centers and logistics installations. In addition to that, 2 military personnel had led to complete breakdown of its defensive and offensive capability and also Pakistani morale.
All right, let's go straight across to Shiv Arur in Srinagar. Shiv, just when we thought that things would improve, it turns out that the ceasefire violation now taking place in Srinagar is significant. What's been happening around you?
Vishnu, for the last 10 minutes, things have quietened down, but what we just saw was easily the most aggressive drone action engagement over Srinagar. What we saw in the morning today was barely a trailer of what we've just witnessed. After we finished reporting about the ceasefire, we were about to take a short break from our broadcast when we heard the gunfire, the ground fire, and the the dull thuds of the, probably the L-70 guns. There were no interceptors. These were all ground fire, including tracer bullets that you actually saw in that video that I filmed from my phone and sent that we have on our screens. It continued for a good 25 to 30 minutes, Vishnu and Maria, and it has stopped for now, but it basically suggests that 3 hours after that ceasefire came into effect, those drones were over Srinagar being engaged very, very aggressively. There was a lot of fire from the L-70, the Zu-23. I recognize those weapons. Vishnu, you're familiar with them as well. There must have been some other kind of fire as well. But the road that I'm staying on, of course, we're not going to identify any locations, has been cordoned off. People have been asked to get off the streets. So it's not very late in the evening, but there's no traffic on the road. It's the police has herded everyone off the road and asked them to go inside. We are taking adequate precautions as well and staying out of the way. It's a very clear night. There's a very, very bright moon. So we visually spotted those incoming drones, little dots of light, the tracer bullets going up at them, and then the gunfire. So that's of course the firing protocol. The tracers go up first, and then there's additional fire from the ground so that the aimers have a sense of where exactly that drone is. They didn't seem to be flying very high. We could see them pop in the air, as they were destroyed. No idea, couldn't see from this distance at least what kind of drones those were, Vishnu and Maria, but it does look like
Shiv,
that
you're saying
ceasefire
that they were
is in
intercepted.
question right now.
Shiv, you're saying that they were intercepted.
They were definitely intercepted. I counted at least 6 drones that we saw popping right in front of our eyes. We were able to capture some of those on our phones, but not all of it because it was happening very, very rapidly. I personally counted 6. There must have been more because these explosions were happening right in front of us, very, very near to where we were. But there were also explosions happening in the distance, and there was gunfire in the distance as well. So I'm assuming that these drones were spread over, a certain significant amount of area over Srinagar. It's a large city, and therefore there must have been drones targeting different sites in the city. It's a population center, so I'm just wondering what that ceasefire was really all about. If you've got drone action just 3 hours later, one cannot even make the argument saying the drones were already in the air when the ceasefire was agreed to. That's impossible because the distances we're talking about are very small. Even though drones are pretty slow flying, it's highly unlikely that something like that could have happened. So I think the sequence of events is going to have to become clear right now.
This raises questions on, who's controlling the Pakistan army? You have the foreign minister of the country say that, okay, fine, we've agreed to a ceasefire. You've got the director general of military operations call up RDGMO and say, okay, look, let's stop the firing. It was agreed on for 5 p.m. and then somebody, and then they go ahead and do this. And it's not just in Srinagar. There are some other parts of Jammu and Kashmir where they may also, along the LC, as I understand it, be ceasefire violations. But I don't know, is it true, as you were mentioning, that it's now for the last 10, 15 minutes, it's not been happening?
No, it's all quiet now, but the blackout is still very much in force. And unusually, this is something I've seen for the first time here in Srinagar, Vishnu and Maria, is that all traffic has been taken off the road. There is no traffic. All the traffic lights are also off. The lights on the Shankaracharya hill that overlooks Srinagar, which are usually kept lit ceremonially, they've been turned off for the first time since I arrived in Srinagar 15 days ago, and very, very unusual. So obviously this confirms and establishes that this was the kind of major engagement that we were looking at. There have been reports of other ceasefire violations taking place on the LOC, but we don't want to speculate, obviously, too much on those because, there could be various reasons why they could be happening, but there have been reports of drone action in some areas, especially Kathua, Samba and Akhnur, which our reporters are getting us across the network, Srinagar definitely one of them. So, if Srinagar, the city itself, was, on that target list, it looks like they've waited till after a ceasefire. I'm a little perplexed about what to make of this, honestly, while I'm reporting this from the ground. But 3 hours after the ceasefire, to see a major drone action, something is most definitely amiss, and I'm still trying to make sense of it.
All right, so this is deeply worrying. I mean, just a few hours back, we were hoping for peace. Now there appears to be the scenario developing, which is uncertain. It does need to be mentioned that in the last 10-15 minutes, it's back to being quiet in Srinagar. Let us hope that there is some sense of sanity and there is that agreement which is adhered to. We'll have to see all night what takes place. For now, we'll take this short break.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
गोल्ड प्लस ऑप्टिमिस्टिक रिफ्लेक्टिव ग्लास लगाओ, धूप की गर्मी को दूर भगाओ और बिजली का बिल भी बचाओ।
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru, only on NDTV 24/7.
The last 1 month, if you see, the share prices of Genzol Engineering has fallen more than 58%.
Why are the rating firms calling the debt payments as default?
We have two credible credit rating agencies on March 4th coming and downgrading the stock to D.
Statements are consistently being proven wrong, and transactions are being taken place which are different from what they were originally pictured to be.
The company claimed it would roll out 6,400 electric vehicles. But what it has rolled out is a shocking scam. Funds meant for the project were funneled allegedly back to the promoters.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights?
Vishnu, I think today was a very pivotal day, to be honest. It could have either escalated further or it could have de-escalated today. The reason I'm saying this is that, over the past 3 days, we have seen a pattern of constant escalation in the attack that is coming from Pakistan. And naturally, that was also responded to in a befitting manner from our side, which has led to a lot of damage to military assets and military infrastructure in Pakistan, some of which are very important and critical for their overall military preparedness. Now, if they had continued with this process, either escalation in the current domain or expanded the war horizontally, it would have met with, as I said before to you, that with continuous escalation dominance from our side. So there would have been two things in my mind that would have been at play. So I was half expecting that this would happen, especially when the news came out that we would treat any future terror attack as an act of war. that something or would have been working out. And I think two things would have definitely happened. One is that I think the international community would have been waking up to the reality of what Pakistan was attempting to do for whatever its objectives were, and that there would have been a degree of pressure on them because it was clearly the pattern of escalation and then response left the onus on them to start taking the steps to stop this. And the second was obviously their own internal calculations of how far they can go on to escalating this and sustaining this given the internal situation. And remember that we've all been aware of the fact that there is a much higher staying capacity and much, of course, asymmetrically more power to deliver from our side. So I think this would have been both a combination of a certain diplomatic pressures on them, and then second, I think also internal calculation on the steps that they have to take, because I think over 3 days they made an attempt to, at least in my view, get one or two major targets in India that would have given them a reason to celebrate or tell their people that we were able to reciprocate or pay India back in the coin. But there was, in a sense, an impenetrable wall of air defense, which had largely foiled this massive waves of drones and missiles that were coming into the country with no major damage.
But Ambassador Ashraf, let me ask you this, sir. The fact that we hit Pakistan as hard as we did, we hit Skardu, by the way. That's the latest in the list of air bases we struck, and I think at least 8 or 9 others, virtually every single Pakistani air base. And we were fairly relentless about this. The videos have showed significant damage in some of them. Do you believe that that is ultimately what pushed Pakistan to the negotiation?
That's what I'm saying, that, you know,
it wasn't just America's pressure and them saying,
No. I think that, listen, in anything of this nature, finally, it is the two parties involved in a process who make that decision. And no matter if their calculation was, and look, this is an era in which, a time in which the world is preoccupied with a number of its own issues, whether it's the United States, Europe, or China, or Russia. It is a time when this sort of international order has collapsed. It is not what exactly we had seen in the past. So there was, in a sense, space for them to continue with this operation. The message that they had got out of Washington, D.C. was, you guys need to sort this out on your own. You remember in the past, there used to be breathless shuttle diplomacy that used to start immediately after a major terrorist incident. So I think they felt that they had a space. I think there would have been, conversations are always taking place, but it's really the impact of the military measures that we took, and in a sense went beyond what they would have expected us to do, as you've just mentioned, and we don't need to repeat all the damage that we have done specifically in the course of these 3 years. And remember, each time we mentioned that we are acting in a measured manner and with a sense of responsibility. We had said on 7th that we have achieved our objectives and we have no desire to escalate, but that there would be a